good thing to find out, because I did a trip to China, and there was one other trip I did was pretty exotic. I think it was the Africa one, where I took malaria pills, and you have to, and there's a certain rule about those. I got them from my doctor, and then the pharmacy had to special order them because it's not common, and you have to take them like starting a week before your trip and continue them a week after you return. Kind of an important thing. I also was in China where they had a yellow fever outbreak, but I was not going to be anywhere near any of that area. The one vaccination I tell people that they really have to have is the hepatitis A and B. Make sure you've got that, because that's for life, and it also is something that's usually always required somewhere. But check into those, the cards. I'm going to have to do it because it's a new thing where they're now requiring, some countries are requiring that.
Yeah. Yes. So how safe is the world out there? How safe is the world out there in terms of security? Because, for example, even Belgium, I remember last summer, it was a military police all over the place. The buses have to drop you within a mile from the airport, and then you have to walk under video and within these military group. So what's going on?
You know what? Yeah, you know what? I've been through stuff pretty strict like that too. I had an experience in one country where not only did you had to go through the screening at the door to get into the terminal, then you had to go through the screening like we always do at an airport, then you had to go through a screening at the gate, and then we had to walk out on the tarmac, climb up to the airplane, and go through another screening. So they're just being really, really extra careful. It's the way it is now. You know, when you and I started traveling a long time ago, I remember us being able to wait for someone at their gate when they'd fly in. Those days are gone, and they're trying to keep everybody safe. So you just add the extra time for your flights with that. As far as safety in big cities, you know, a big city is a big city. New York and Paris. I went to the Eiffel Tower, and they had guys walking around it with automatic rifles. You know, I was at the Stonehenge a couple days after 9/11, and that was crazy. You know, because people are on edge. But I think now that security is kind of across the board, and then Belgium had that terrorist attack, they're going to be overly careful. And I think that it's just something people are going to have to get used to. I have not seen it lighten up. But if you are doing everything you should and don't have anything extra and don't give security a hard time, you're going to get through and get on your plane without a problem and not miss your flight. It's just something to get used to. And that goes for the tourist sites as well. One interesting thing, I was in Rome 2.5 years ago. Anyways, they have now built a barrier around the Forum in downtown Rome. You used to be able to just walk up and walk through and take your time. Now you have to get through a gate, in order to go through. So they've, you know, and they also pushed back the distance for all the vendors that like to sell souvenirs and stuff. They can't be anywhere near like the Colosseum or the Forum. So this is just a new thing, and this is just the way it is. And we old timers remember when it was a little bit more open. Now, because of the way the world is, it's not. So just get used to it, I guess.
Good. Secure Radio here. Our guest, Carol Lee Porter. If you just join us, we're talking about the world travels, experiences, and tips. Now, we talk about safety. We talk about, you mentioned a 5 continent. What is your favorite place among the 5 continents?
Say cool, there's 7 continents. And I've been to all 7. And you know what? I think the most amazing one was Antarctica. And the reason is because it wasn't even on my to-do list. It wasn't in a bucket list. It was someplace that was so impossible that I would never see it. And then one day I called this company I was mentioning that I do the big trips with and said, can you put me on a list for that trip? And it was just me. And I said, and I'll travel with anybody who is traveling alone. I don't have anybody to travel with because Mom had been sick at that time. And that was too much of a trip for her to do. It was actually a 28-day trip. And I had to get 2 years. I gave my boss 2 years notice and asked permission to do that trip. And with no regrets, it has been probably far and away the most amazing trip I've been on because of how pristine it was, how complicated it was to do it. Apparently the ship has to burn off heavy fuel before it even gets close to Antarctica. We can't walk on Antarctica physically because any vessel over 100 people is not allowed to dock or more or anything. But we were in and out of all these harbors, saw whales, saw little penguins floating on little what they call bittybergs, and there were some specialists from Antarctica that had been very big part of the establishment of it's a research place. That's all it is. It's research. Nobody lives there except the scientists that stay there and continue research. And I thought that was just absolutely fascinating. I felt like I was going to Antarctica school every day. It wasn't as cold as you think. You know, their summertime is December, January. And the middle of February, that's it.
Okay.
You're done. You can't get there. It was beautiful. It was absolutely pristine, beautiful.
Now, beside Antarctica, now I know that you work with the travel agency, and
yes.
For people who are listening to us and wanted to get in touch with you, do you have the website for your travel agency?
They can send me an email at travel, TRAVEL, CLP at AOL.com. Travel CLP at AOL.com.
Okay. So
website, there's not one really created. I'm working on a blog.
Okay, so we're heading toward the end of this session, radio show, Sekou Radio. Today guest is Carolee Porter, world traveler. Very interesting subject. I love travel myself.
I know you do.
Carolee, if you have to, what does a travel do for you? If you have to define it, what is it? Yeah.
Wow, that's you know what? I have become a more fulfilled person because having met cultures and people all over the world, I have learned more about what they go through. And I find out that most of them are just families like us that want to have a better life for their children or their families. And that's all there is to it. I have actually done little experiments where I remember one in particular I'll tell you about. I was in Switzerland. I was in Lago Lugano or Lake Lugano. Anyways,
right. Lozano.
I walked
Lozano, yeah.
Lozano. I went up to this man who was sitting there, and I walked up to him and sat down on the bench and said, "Do you speak English?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And I told him who I was and that I was visiting from America. And I said, can you tell me a little bit about the history right here? And I ended up having the greatest conversation with this man. Sometimes, now you gotta, pay attention. You're not going to go up to someone who looks creepy or is kind of squirrely or anything like that. You can tell, I've had great conversations with the tour guides, with other people that I've traveled with. And I think that I have become more of a whole person because I understand culture better. When things happen on the news, when things are happening in the world, I am able to understand the culture, the religions, the way people behave or how they live their lives and raise their families, because I've seen it firsthand. I've been to Israel. I've been to Muslim countries. I've been to Christendom. I've been all over where I see how people live and I understand it better. I can come back and now share that with other people. And by knowing something about where you've been also helps me to tell people, answer their questions about travel and help them to pick a good place that they would enjoy. And that's kind of, I've grown. I think I've grown. It's been a great classroom. There's this great saying that's, I don't know who said it, but it said, "Don't tell me what you know, tell me where you've been." And
so it's a classroom with no diploma, but you're always learning something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're right on. I know you've learned a lot, but I sure have learned a lot too.
Now we have some minute left. This subject is so interesting. I know you do some historical site. When I travel, I do historical site. I visit some monuments. What are the different variables out there when you travel? Some people are historically oriented. Some people are site oriented. What do you do?
Okay. I deliberately, when I pick a place and I have all these options, I'm always looking for the history. I have probably read something or brought a book along or something, so I've got a background before I've even got there. And I want to know the story behind the story. I want to see it up close. One great example, Lucerne, Switzerland. A group of us walked in the evening, and it was freezing cold, and we didn't know where they were taking us. All of a sudden, we go around these homes, and all of a sudden, there we are, staring at a wall, a rock wall with a 500-year-old carving of a lion. And it was a very symbolic, historic. It told the story about how the Swiss had lost a war. But I never would have seen that if someone hadn't. This was an early on trip. If someone hadn't taken me there. So now, after finding that little gem in the middle of a little neighborhood, I now look for those places. So before I go somewhere, like the trip coming up, I've already got the books out. I'm going to find something new.
Thank you so much, CQ Radio's with the guest Carolee Porter. We're going to have to bring Carolee back again because this is a very interesting subject. Carolee, sure. Thank you, and we'll get back to you later. And I'm going to turn the mic back to the stations. And again, thank you for listening. And Carolee has her her email on the show. If you wanted to contact her, she will give you some more information. That was CQ Radio on World Travel by Carolee Porter. Thank you.